It took about a bajillion years, and yes, I mean a bajillion years, but the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott, well, they finally came to an agreement on a contract, and a monster one at that. But can the return of Dak be enough for the Cowboys to finally make a move in the postseason? Well, in week 5 of last season against division rival the Giants, Prescott, of course, went down with a gruesome right ankle injury. But in the midst of rehabbing that, and almost 5 years after the Cowboys drafted him in 2016, the Cowboys and Dak agreed to a 4-year extension worth up to $160 million, 126 of that guaranteed. So what does that mean regarding Dak and the rest of the quarterback market? Well, he is now making about $40 million per year, putting him just behind Patrick Mahomes. We are now officially less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, so we are going into the Cowboys war room with our good friend Patrik Walker. All right, Patrick, we're going to get to the draft here in a second, but let's talk about Dak. He got the contract. Congrats, that's done. Let's move on. The focus is on his health for 2021. We see these rehab pictures. Those are fantastic, but what can you tell us about his actual health?
As it stands, Amanda, he is and remains ahead of schedule. It's great for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys that he voluntarily underwent that second surgery after the initial surgery. And as CBS Sports reported, I reported a few months ago, the reason he underwent the second surgery was not because there were any setbacks with the initial one that followed the compound fracture in week 5, but because he wanted to strengthen the ligaments and the bones themselves to make sure that he would not suffer a similar injury going forward. And it has worked out masterfully for him. He's well ahead of schedule. Should the Cowboys report to offseason conditioning in a traditional manner and not opt to join some of the other teams around the league in doing the virtual boycott, for lack of a better way to put it, I'm told that Dak Prescott will continue to be in the building as he has been for weeks on end now with his rehabilitation. So Dak Prescott is, again, ahead of schedule with that ankle. There are literally no concerns from the Cowboys standpoint. I've had several conversations with all types of sources. They have never voiced a single concern about Dak Prescott's health going forward, and that's why you saw the Cowboys so comfortable with giving him that 4-year, $160 million contract.
All right, pretty good. All right, Cowboys and free agency. Of course, a lot of focus was in-house with Dak. A lot of money went on to that. Beyond that, the Cowboys, they made a couple moves. Nothing majorly splashy, I guess. How would you grade their free agency?
I give them a B+. Now, obviously, there's still one glaring hole, or you could say 1 or 2 glaring holes, but I'm looking at the cornerback position opposite Trevon Diggs. Trevon Diggs is coming off of a great rookie season, but they're going to have to address the situation opposite Diggs. Obviously, they lose Chidobe Awuzie in free agency to the Cincinnati Bengals, and you have a void there. I would like them to go out and grab someone like a Richard Sherman potentially, but doesn't look like that's going to happen. And if it's going to happen, that's the kind of signing that would come at this point after the draft, once the Cowboys see or don't see what they get in the haul. But you got to love what they're getting with Keanu Neal and how they're going to flex him between safety and linebacker. Going to be a very interesting experiment there. Neal, obviously a rollover from his time with the Falcons and Dan Quinn. And then there's another rollover in Damontae Kazee. Damontae Kazee is coming off of a torn Achilles, but I'm told that his medical evaluation with the Cowboys went very well. And we're talking about Dak Prescott being ahead of schedule. I'm told that Damontae Kazee is also ahead of schedule in the recovery from his torn Achilles. So if Kazee can get back to prime form, and prime form being equal to when he reeled in 7 interceptions and was the NFL co-interceptions leader just a couple of seasons ago, and you put him opposite Donovan Wilson, the breakout strong safety from last season, Cowboys are looking good from a free agency standpoint going into the draft. Still have a glaring need at cornerback opposite Trevon Diggs, though, and they need to address that immediately.
Patrick, I know I don't have to remind you of this. You were there in DFW. The Cowboys now going on 26 seasons since they've made it back to the Super Bowl. They've not been to the postseason since 2018. They obviously would like to change that. You mentioned corner there, but looking ahead to the draft, we are now less than 2 weeks away. What are some of the needs that they need? Corner, what else?
Top need is going to be cornerback. Outside of cornerback, you're going to have to look at addressing the safety position as well. Although they brought in Keanu Neal, who again will be looked upon as a flex player, and yes, they brought in Kazee. If Kazee can get back to prime form, all the better for the Cowboys. But there's a reason he's on a 1-year deal. It's because the Cowboys still need him to come back and prove he can be that player, and that means you're going to have to grab some insurance for the long term at the cornerback position in the NFL draft this April. Outside of that, you want to look at your linebacker position. Quite quiet as it's kept. The Cowboys, although publicly they are continuing to be completely behind Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith is coming off of his worst year as an NFL pro. Leighton Vander Esch has continued to battle durability issues. Sean Lee, his future is up in the air. Still no word on if he's going to retire or if he's going to play one more season with the Dallas Cowboys. You have a sneaky need at linebacker, and then you drop down to the defensive line. I love what they did in bringing in a player like Brent Urban. He is a definitive run stopper, rated as the 3rd best run stopper in the league last season. But the jury is out on what they got in Carlos Watkins. They went and brought Terrell Basham in, who was a key reason that they parted ways with Alden Smith, along with the fact they want to unleash Randy Gregory and see what they have with former 5th-round pick Bradley Anae, who did not get any playing time from a defensive standpoint last season. You're going to have to throw some more bodies at the defensive line, especially that defensive interior. You have Antoine Woods on the right first refusal tender. Doesn't guarantee that he'll be back just yet. So you're going to have to get another run stopper in there, big body nose tackle. Make sure that you have that defensive interior set up so that your edge rushers and Randy Gregory, potentially Bradley Anae, Terrell Basham, obviously all-pro DeMarcus Lawrence, can really unleash on those edges. So outside of cornerback, they have a lot of work still to be done on defense.
That was almost overwhelming. A lot of work to be done. Cowboys fans, I hope you can digest all of that. All right, so the Cowboys have the 10th overall pick in the draft. There are a handful of very good cornerbacks that they could potentially find there, depending on what happens 1 through 9. What are some names you are looking at, Patrick, at 10?
I think for 1A, you're going to have to go with Patrick Surtain II out of Alabama. I think for my money, Surtain is the best cornerback in this year's draft pool. The Cowboys, if he's available at number 10, you got to pull that trigger. There are going to be some wild cards, obviously. Maybe Kyle Pitts falls down to number 10. I think that's unfathomable when you look at the fact that the Atlanta Falcons are sitting at 4. And yes, the Falcons could go quarterback there. They could trade back. But just because the Falcons decide to trade back, if they do so, doesn't mean they're going to drop out of the top 10. They could potentially drop out of 4, anywhere between 5 to 9, and still take Kyle Pitts, get their quarterback, and get a talent that is going to be a weapon for Matt Stafford. I'm sorry, not Matt Stafford, but Matthew Ryan going forward. Now, outside of Pitts being the wild card, Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater potentially being wild cards, Patrick Surtain is my top corner. Outside of that, J.C. Horn, another guy you want to keep an eye on. There is a relationship there from the University of South Carolina by way of Muschamp, which has a connection to obviously Dan Quinn. J.C. Horn also had a fantastic pro day alongside Patrick Surtain. So those are several names that the Cowboys are going to have available to them, several of them, if not all of them, at number 10. So it's going to be very difficult for them to not get a day 1 starter at number 10 if they sit tight.
So Patrick Surtain is your number 1 corner. I want to give you a prop. Yes, Caleb Farley, of course, good, but he had the back surgery. J.C. Horn, good, but Patrick Surtain for you is number 1. So here's the prop on his draft position, over under 10.5.
As it stands, I'm going to go with under. It's going to be difficult for him to get to number 10, and that's where a player like J.C. Horn comes in for the Cowboys, because again, that's one great consolation prize if you want to view it that way. I think again, Horn is a 1B, but when you look at Surtain, look at what he has to go through in order to get to the Cowboys at number 10. You have the Detroit Lions, you have the Denver Broncos. These are teams that could arguably stand to gain from adding Surtain to the fold. And yes, the Lions, they went and got Okudah in the first round last year, but Okudah had a very poor rookie season. Now, that's not to say Okudah's not going to bounce back in year 2, but if you're the Lions, you're justified in doubling back to another first-round pick on a cornerback, and Surtain could be the guy. Now, if you get Surtain and you're the Lions and Okudah has a great year 2, guess what? Now you have 2 shutdown corners. You look at the Broncos, they lock up Justin Simmons, and guess what? You're going to need to get some help in front of Justin Simmons. Hey, Patrick Surtain is that guy. So the Cowboys are going to have some competition in getting and hoping Surtain falls to number 10, but if he does not, you're going to have some other options like Horn. It's just going to be difficult to fathom that Surtain is still available. And if he is, that means Horn is off the board.
Good and bad news there. Good and bad news. All right, Cowboys, 2 weeks from today, we will be on day 2 of the NFL draft. Who could they find here?
On day 2, you're going to look at the safety position. And as I stated, cornerback is going to be the more pressing issue outside of the wild cards on the offensive side of the ball. But once they go on the clock at 44, assuming they sit tight and don't trade back up, or trade up, I should say, you're looking at a player like Trevon Moehrig or Ardarius Washington, obviously teammates from TCU. The Cowboys have a ton of tape on them because those are local prospects. I'm told they are very high on Moehrig, but almost equally as high on Ardarius Washington. One of those 2 guys, I believe, is going to be available available at 44. Probably more likely Washington. I think Morig is going to grade higher on a lot of boards around the league. Maybe he's a late first rounder, early second rounder. They probably have to trade up just a bit to get him. But if they sit tight, you still have Washington, or you have Richie Grant out of UCF. I'm told they have a lot of interest in Grant as well. Grant is great at doing everything Washington and Morig can do, although he doesn't have as much experience, not as much, big game experience as those two guys. But those are three names that I see as premier players that could still be available at 44 for the Cowboys to help address their second most important position of need right now.
Patrik Walker, we appreciate your time. Enjoy the Bluebonnets there in Texas. I miss them a lot. We appreciate it. All right, taking a look at the Cowboys' odds when it comes to 2021. I mean, they're okay. As I've mentioned, they are now going on 26 seasons since they've made it to the Super Bowl. They have not been to the postseason since 2018, and most of their postseason appearances don't make it out of the wild card round. However, you do have the return of Dak Prescott.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.